All right, so you should be able to see this screen. This something you might be familiar with is the CD3Systems.com owner portal in the top side. If you scroll down about halfway down the page, you'll see the CD3 Software Customer Login button. If you click that, it'll bring you to our portal here. From there, you can get a username and password, which will get sent out to you relatively soon, and then you'll click Log In. Once you log in here, it will load up your assets alongside this nice picture of a boat. If you have multiple, they'll all display along here. If you have more assets than show in this box, it will create a scroll bar that you can scroll down and see all of the assets that way. However, the assets will, we have to call it bubble up to the top. So as you can see here, the station and outpost are towards the top. Because they don't have the green circle, they have this orange square for a warning alert and this red octagon for a critical alert. We'll talk a little bit more about alerts and what that means in a minute here. But say you want to take a look at that, you can go ahead, click on the asset you wanted to investigate, and it will load up this page. Here it will give you a list of all of your tools, your left, center tool, right, vacuum, air, and light usage, and then corresponding picture of the device. But as you can see here, the reason this asset is alerting is because its tank level is rather high. So that means we might want to have someone go out, empty that tank, or at least take a look at it. We also have a drop down here, so if we wanted to go switch over to that wayside, we could do that, and all of your assets will populate on this list as well, so you can quickly switch between them without having to go back. Here you can see we have slightly less tool usage. We have some battery alerts, and this looks, you can see the solar unit, and so it'll tell you how much is left of the battery. So maybe there's a couple overcast days, it doesn't get quite as much power, but it's getting heavily used anyways. You'll be able to check your battery usage there. If you wanted a little bit more detail, you can go up to this Views menu in the upper left-hand corner of your screen under the CD3 station logo, and click the All Assets page. Clicking this will bring you into what we call the grid view. And as a baseline, it'll give you the status of the device as far as alert status, the name, and the last report. But if we go to our grids and we go to stations to view all of our stations, here we can see going across, it has a bunch of different tool counts. And we can see all of, at a glance, real quick, what the comparison and most popular tools for each asset are. These columns here are organizable, so we can click, drag, and reorganize these columns. We can sort based on the columns, or we can filter to is greater than 1. So if we only want to see tools that have had, or stations that have had light button used, we can filter it that way. We can go ahead and clear that out and bring it back to normal. Alternatively, we can go to our select columns under the actions menu. And from select columns, it'll give us a list of all of the options of what we can add here. So say we don't want to see our light button or our air button usage, but we want to see which district it's in because that's relevant to us. But in this case, it's not, so we can turn that back off. But we might not want to see the name, but let's turn on the light button usage, turn off the compressor, and turn on the type. We can close out there and you can see that those dynamically changed here. And this, whatever these settings are, will persist through your logout. So if you log out, log back in, you don't have to reset this every time. But that can be a useful tool if you want to check something specific. Another option you can do with that is you can go up to Actions, Export to Excel, and it will take exactly what you have here, the order of the columns, the values in those columns, and the rows going down of each asset, and export that to a downloadable Excel spreadsheet. But if we wanted to get a little bit more detail on the asset, we can click the drop down, and it'll pull up a list of all of the readings on there, which is the same as going across, but here we have the date that that particular reading came in, the value of that reading, as well as an optional history chart that we can turn on. So if we want to see what the history for the tank level is, we can click on the tank level, we can go back for, say, 365 days, and we can see the tank level. If we wanted to compare that to our tool usage, we can also add our tool usage to those screens. Another cool feature that we have for these history charts is you can actually click and drag and highlight and zoom in to the selected data. So we can zoom in towards just this end here and we can see that we had pretty stable tank level, and then within a day it shot all the way back up to 87%. And here we can see what all of our tool usage is going back as far as we like. We can also hold shift and click and scroll through this, and it will automatically recalibrate, see what the tank level is up here. And as we go down, it will adjust on the fly what those values are along the side and what the scaling is, so it can show all of the data. From here, we also have an option to view the hit chart in full screen. If you wanted to, say, just have a history chart up on a monitor and just look at it. We can exit from full screen on that. We can also print the chart, which will print or bring you to a print preview of exactly what we see here. Or we can download a CSV, which will download all of the data that's totally selected. So if we hit reset zoom, it'll grab all of this data, not just what you've highlighted. We can also clear our history chart here, put on something different, and we can again highlight, zoom in, and we can zoom in pretty far, all the way down to one data point throughout the whole year. And we can scroll back, and we can see as we scroll through, we can scroll out, we can zoom in quite far. Additionally, we have some new reports that are rather fun to look at. We have a data export report, a tool use report, a full tool usage, and a single asset tools. So our data export will allow you to export all of the raw data for any or all assets. So if we want all of our locations or a specific asset, so say we just want the Bayview station, or we can do all assets, and we want 1 year's worth of data. So we can set our end date to be today by default, and then we can click through here and it'll change either 1 day ago, 7 days ago, all the way up to a year. And then we can click into here and select dynamically which readings we want to include on our report. So say we want our tank level, our tool 1, 2, and 3, and our AC voltage. We can click that and then export. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this because of how I'm sharing, but it'll pop up it'll pop up an option to save as an Excel spreadsheet of all of the raw data, which you could then import into something like a Power BI or another data manipulation tool and get a good view of what is going on with that. We can also go to our reports and we can go to our tool usage report. We can go back here. So this will show all of the tool usage for all of our devices. So if we click show report, this one will be able to see nice and pretty. And here it'll break it down by our location and the month. So here we have our device, our outpost station, trailer, and wayside. We have the months that they had usage, as well as how many times during that month each tool was used. We can scroll down. We also have a chart that'll show cumulative how many usage we had. So we had a total tool use 3 count in January of 2,859 uses. If we want a little bit more detail on that, we can also go to a different report of the full tool usage or single asset tools. And we can take a look at, say, if we want to see just our outpost, we can get that same report, but for just that one device. And here you can see that it contributed 700 uses of that 2,800 in January. And so you can see and compare these, see which tools or which assets are being used the most, and then either maybe move it if you have a mobile unit or make adjustments as needed. So we can go through there. I think that's all for the reporting. We also have an option to show all on map, which if you have more than one asset or a mobile asset, this will show you where every asset is located. So here we have 2 at this lake, 2 at this lake, and this will show the status. So these 2 have an alert, and it'll show the highest alert. So here, these assets and these assets are all green, so the overall circle is green. But here it's red. So if we zoom out, eventually that'll become a 6, and it turns red because there is a red alert status, because that's the highest alert status for that location. So we can click on that, and we can see all of the usage. So we can see what reading it is just from the map. So we can see that the tank level is at 87%, and that's why this one's critical. If the station was a mobile unit, and it had a GPS hit location history, there'd be another button here that would show location history, and it would show you a breadcrumb trail of everywhere that asset has reported in. And similar to the history chart, you can choose and select your date and time range that you would like to export. And then it'll pop up on a map with each with dots showing each location it was in. So if you wanted to kind of track where it was around a lake, or say it's a mobile asset, somebody moved it and didn't tell somebody else, you can track down where that asset is located. We can also close that map. And another useful tool is we can go map on just the asset itself from this drop-down menu instead of the history chart. We can just click map here, and it'll show where that asset specifically is. And then a little bit more useful, especially if you have someone on mobile, and I don't know if I mentioned previously, all of these tools also work exactly the same on mobile. The only difference is if you're in the history chart, obviously you can't shift click or click and drag, but you can pinch to zoom and scroll through the history chart, as is pretty intuitive on mobile. But if you're on mobile, this navigate option becomes much more beneficial because you can click that button and it'll open into your Google Maps or your Apple Maps or whatever your default navigation option is, and it can give you turn-by-turn directions from your location directly to the GPS coordinates of that device, which is very useful if you have either a mobile unit or a new technician who needs to go out and investigate a unit for the first time. They can get turn-by-turn directions from the software itself. They don't need to find an address or anything along those lines. And then if we like, we can go back up to our views. We can go to our home menu, and it'll bring us right back to the picture of a boat in our list of assets. So I'll go ahead and end the recording here, and then open it up to questions.